The following is a production of the Baltimore Regional Guardian Angels. The opinions expressed are those of the individuals and do not necessarily reflect the official policies of the Alliance of Guardian Angels or the Baltimore Regional Guardian Angels.
"2015 was one of the most violent years in Baltimore history. Riots, police misconduct, stop snitching, leadership failures, gang wars, drug-related violence, daylight murders. It's time to get past being politically correct. It's time to go beyond the streets. Beyond the Streets, the Baltimore Guardian Angels podcast."
Hey, this is Strider, Regional Director for the Guardian Angels here in Baltimore. Today, Beyond the Streets is going to The Hard Truth. The Hard Truth is a podcast show put together by my personal friend and somewhat hero, Ed Norris. Ed Norris was a 20-year veteran of the NYPD, Baltimore City Police Commissioner, Maryland State Police Superintendent. He also was a cast member on the Baltimore-based television HBO series The Wire, radio host, most of all, a personal friend. Beyond the Streets is honored to have this opportunity to meet with the Ed Norris Show, The Hard Truth, and we're going to talk to somebody who has dedicated their whole life to law enforcement. So sit back, enjoy Beyond the Streets as we get to The Hard Truth with our friend Ed Norris.
Hello and welcome to The Hard Truth with Ed Norris. You're listening to the show. You know, we're sponsored by Ackerman Security, America's only security company that has a guaranteed response time, which is exactly why you want a security company, right? So thank you to Ackerman Security for sponsoring this podcast. As you know, we do something different every week. This week, I brought in a group that I became familiar with when I was with the NYPD way back in the early 80s in New York City, when it was when Times Square was really Times Square. And it was a controversial time because I viewed it as a group that I would welcome because you could use all the help you can get out there, especially when you're by yourself. Other people view them differently. There was a lot of misunderstanding with the police department, but that has since been squared away, and their founder now, Curtis Lewa, has become one of my friends, someone I'm proud to call a friend, who does a similar job. He's a radio show in New York City, and he's a very interesting life and a very successful man who founded the Guardian Angels, which is the group I'm talking about. So today I've got, how do you want to be addressed there, Strider?
Regional Director, Strider, Guardian Angels, Baltimore.
And your full name for the record?
Marcus Strider, Dent, for the record.
And Marcus I've known for a long time, from when I was Police Commissioner of Baltimore to this day, which is a decade and a half almost. But anyway, I just thought we'd bring in Strider and talk a little bit about just events. There's a lot of things going on in America right now, and of course Baltimore was at the forefront of controversy for the wrong reasons, with the unrest, the riots, whatever you want to call them here, and then the terrible spike in crime we've had. And I just want to get someone's take who's still out there and in the community, talks to the communities, walks the community, to find out what's going on in our city and cities like Chicago, I'm assuming, and a lot of others who find themselves on the wrong end of the UCR, the crime report. Just kind of what you're feeling out there. First of all, thanks for coming in. Good morning.
No, good morning. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
You know, we've been kept trying to hit and miss and get together, and you know, things have been going.
There's a lot
nuts.
going on for both of us.
Yeah.
Personally, so I knew we'd eventually get it done. But first of all, people, and I know it sounds ridiculous because everyone, it's one of those things you assume people know what your organization is, what it does. Brief history, so briefly make the history. Who founded it? Where? Why? What happened?
Well, the Guardian Angels were founded in New York City in 1979 by a man named Curtis Lewa, who was actually a nighttime manager at McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And during that time in 1979, New York was such a mess that his McDonald's kept getting overrun by people who were being robbed at the subways and running into his McDonald's for refuge or help or savior type stuff. And one day Curtis said, "Look, you know what? I've had enough of this." And he went down into the subways, and he took a handful of his McDonald's workers with him, and they stood down there, and they stood watch on the subway platform to see what was going on. And then after that, every day, what they did was they kept going back down there to watch the crimes and seeing how people would, what exactly was going on criminal-wise. And then they started getting involved. So, over time, people started coming down to that particular platform at that certain time, knowing that these gang of nuts were going to be down there to pretty much watch over everybody, and which is pretty much a big thing considering, of course, you were in New York at all that time, all the hell that was going on, and when people realize, oh my God, these guys are coming down here and they're going to watch over us, and every time something happens, they intervene, and so people started traveling at that time, and Curtis ended up getting more and more volunteers to come down and help him out, and the subways became sort of somewhat safe, where he became known, and next month, February the 13th, will be 38 years since the Guardian Angels actually came about.
Incredible.
So now, since that one subway stance down in New York in 1979, the Guardian Angels are all over the world. 29 chapters in Japan, 3 in South Africa. Oh yeah, we're in Hades and New England. We're everywhere, and pretty much all across the country. So there's not.
I didn't realize that big far.
Oh yeah. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting the Guardian Angel somewhere on the planet. Which is pretty impressive. And do you think 29 in Japan alone?
Yeah.
I mean, get a chance to look at those guys' website. They look like a little military unit. It's great.
Really?
Yeah. So Baltimore, as you know, I was part of the original group here in Baltimore in the 1980s, and I stayed maybe 3 or 4 years, and then the group disbanded because, everybody says, oh, the Guardian Angels ran out of Baltimore because of gangs and violence, which is, no, that's crap. But, what happened was, at that time in 1980s, we didn't have the police support. We didn't have the political support. Mm-hmm. We had the support of all the people in the communities, and those communities at that time were from Murphy Homes, Latrobe, Flag Projects. These are all the high-rise places that they ended up blowing up. And that's where we patrolled. That was our playground back at that time. And we didn't have the support we had. And, what stopped the Guardian Angels, just so everybody really knows the truth, is the Guardian Angels were asked to go into South Baltimore when they were huffing glue out of the paper bags. And one of the Guardian Angels came in and snatched a glue bag out of a drug user's hand at the same time a police officer was driving by. So the police officer comes to the alley and arrests the Guardian Angel.
Really?
So Curtis came down and said, okay, you know what, we have to figure this out because we can't go on like this because these interactions between the Guardian Angels and the police are going to escalate to a point where there's no return. And I think that was the smartest thing he's done. I mean, back in the 80s, I stopped a rape on the block in an alley. And we sent the guy down to run down and make a phone call, dial 911, get a cop there. And, we got the lady there, and we're holding on to her, we're holding on to the guy. And we called the police, and when we saw the blue lights hit, we told the lady, okay, the cops are coming, you're going to be okay. And we were out of there. Who knows what was going to happen to us, and there was no way to operate. And, of course, in 2006, I talked to Curtis, and we restarted the group. And one of the first things I did, instead of going to the communities first, I went to Police Commissioner Dent Ham.
Right.
And I said, look, we're bringing the Guardian Angels back into Baltimore. What do you think about this? And he sat me in front of his command staff and drilled me with a bunch of questions and all that. And he actually said, okay, after the meeting, you follow me. I said, okay, okay. And he took me to a Brooklyn community meeting. I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know he was going to say yes, no, hell, whatever. And he walked up, interrupted their meeting, walked down to the front and said, this is, sorry to interrupt your meeting, but this is Strider from the Guardian Angels. They're going to be working with us. They're partners. You deal with them as you deal with us. And he goes, all my officers here. He goes, I don't want a phone call saying that they had to call you twice for anything. That's it. And after that, we spent the next maybe couple years going through all the communities with his help. And, since 2006, we've built a pretty good relationship with the police department. All the commanders coming up, except for Bats, of course. Other than that, he's only one. But other than that, we have a great relationship with the police department. And within the community, it's more, we don't just patrol. We interact. We get involved with everything that help empower the community, whether it's the meetings, the cleanups, or bridging the gaps with different organizations and officials.
Well, I guess the question now is, we've all seen, the problems around the country. Besides the unrest and the riots we had from Ferguson to Baltimore, and various cities in the country, we now see a big crime spike around the country. Like something, it was going the right way for a long time, and I get frustrated because the same people that never wanted to, when crime went up, they said there's nothing you can do about it. When crime went down, they said there's nothing you can do about it. They make no impact. I see a direct correlation between, active, anti-crime stances, progressive, stances in different cities where they need it, like Baltimore, Chicago, and in places, big cities have a lot of violence where they've done a good job, and now all of a sudden, this big anti-law enforcement sentiment in the country. Cops got arrested here for very dubious reasons. They lost all the cases at trial, and they're dismissing them. And now I've heard people are very reluctant to be aggressive in certain cities, and Baltimore is one of them. I just, you're out there, you talk to guys, a lot of the officers here, and people in the community. What do you hear? What do you see out in the street?
What we see, and if you think about it, before the Freddie Gray issue or Trayvon Martin thing, you could see that the relationship between the police and the community was actually starting to come together to a point. And this is just my opinion, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but once that Freddie Gray thing and the Trayvon Martin kicked in, now remember, those are obstacles that you have to come over. You remember before all that, you even had the Sham Room group, which was sort of like the Guardian Angels. They help out, and then you get that whole thing, well, you got this community policing thing, and there's always been a battle when it came to, is that right or wrong? But once the Freddie Gray thing kicked in, it was ridiculous because now all of a sudden it became an issue between police and the community when it came to unsafety for both sides. You can want to call a police officer and say, hey, I got a problem in my house. You call one police officer for something as simple as having a car parked on the wrong side of the street in front of your door, and now you got 10 people coming out with video cameras to watch what this guy's doing, and before you know it, the smallest thing is escalating into a problem. So what does that do? Now the police are afraid to come out and do their job because the slightest little thing turns out with something that escalated off of something that could have just been solved with okay, man, we'll have the thing moved or whatever. Then at the same time, you have the residents who were being pulled over by police officers who were, it was fear. This whole thing, in my opinion, is driven by fear between the residents and the police. The police were afraid they were going to be shot up by gangs or groups of police or not police, but blacks or whatever. Then you had the blacks who were afraid of the white cops right off the bat. So as soon as you pull somebody over, excuse me, man, okay, get your license. And all of a sudden you got a video camera, you got a confrontation there. It goes YouTube, it goes viral, and next thing you know, the whole country's marching for one thing. Yet, we have over 300 homicides in Baltimore City on black crime, and nobody says a damn thing. So that was a pretty bad time at that. And I think that, after all that, and you've seen what happened and you say I call them riots. They were riots. And with that, Baltimore also got another black eye because everybody that had a camera from across the country or around the world was here parked outside City Hall. And what happened then? Everybody wanted to see just Baltimore became the hub of all this, and everybody started simulating riots in other cities. Right after this, it went right to New York. No matter what the issue was, everybody went there, and that's what we ended up dealing with. And you can say, okay, that's the negative part of it. That's sad. It's the marches. It's the violence. It's all this. What we saw as Guardian Angels, we didn't get involved in all the fanfare and all the publicity and all the politicians and all that. We kept doing what we did in our own neighborhoods. But what we also found out was that there were a lot of communities that stepped up and said, look, wait a minute. We are afraid to call the police for anything because not of our safety in fear of police, but because of the fear of the safety of the police if we happen to need them. What is it we can do? And they would end up calling the Guardian Angels, and we would go out and we worked with the command staff, we worked with the district majors and the post officers because they all knew us. We worked with the community leaders, and those are the ones that helped squash a lot of what could have went on. Baltimore could have really had a bad time. Yeah. You had the mayor. I think the mayor did how can I say it without the push button, but a crappy job, But
you don't have. There's no dump on this. This is not
okay.
Well, you can say what you want.
I think she did a shitty job. Yeah. I think Bats did a shitty job.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the police, whenever you have that many cops out on the street to stop an issue, and then you tell them that they can't respond, and the whole entire world watches you get your ass kicked on television and you can't do anything about it, that's a bad thing. We sent the wrong message across the country and around the world, in my opinion. And I'm just a community volunteer, but this is what you actually what I see.
Yeah, no, that's what I want to say. I did really want your opinion. And for people who can't, your podcast is video, mine is audio. You know, you're a black man. So people can't see race on this. You know, it's an audio podcast. That's why I want your opinion.
And let's talk about it. And so I don't want to hear nobody complain and whine to me about, well, you know, bullshit. I'm black. Okay, I've been stopped by police officers for no reason. I've been checked. I've been frisked. I went through all the same stuff that everybody else has gone through. I go through. So I don't even want to hear it. But at the same time, you know, one of the things that happened that you got to give credit for the Baltimore PD, and especially I give the credit to Davis because I think the best thing they could have done was just got batched the hell out of here because he was just he was a community leader with a badge. But what happened was the command staff of Baltimore City was able to actually heal the police department and satisfy the community as well. They went in, they were out all the time, they did everything they had to do. When bad things happened, they didn't wait and look for witnesses. They went door to door. They passed out flyers. They talked to people. They were literally in the communities all the time. And how do I know that? Because we were in the communities all the time. We would literally run into the command staff. I'd ride down the street, and here comes Deputy Commissioner Dean Palmier pulling up in a car. You know, what are you doing? Oh, I'm here checking on some students. You know, they don't have to do this. Right. But they made it a point to get involved in what was going on. And I say this all the time. People say, well, you know, you're just saying that because you're protecting the police. No, I'm not saying that because it is so much easier to promote and keep a riot going than it is to stop one. Yeah. And then after the fact, you had your leaders out here that came out that, you know, that wanted to step in the middle because CNN was here and Fox News and everybody, I'm going to come out and I'm going to do this and I've got the grace of God in me and I've got this, I've got that. Yeah, okay. The cameras disappeared, you didn't see them anymore. We even had the Blood and Crips come out and want to do something. You know, in my opinion, you know, great job, guys, because, you know, what did you do? You disrupted their business with the military out there. Yeah, the National Guard, you had cops on every corner. You can't sell drugs with all this crap going on. You know, wait a minute, you're interfering with business here. But at the same time, they took a stand. They decided to step up and come out. I'm not saying it was good, bad, or indifferent. We didn't deal with any of that at all. But you got to give credit to the Baltimore Police Department for how they handled it, and the command staff, and all the other officers, the rank and file, who didn't just say, you know, F this, I'm out. You know, because there was a lot. Well, there was some that did, but there were so many more that could have. There was a lot of tension during that time. It was pretty bad.
It was awful.
You know, we ended up with 344 homicides, and people were walking the country fighting over the fact that one black guy got killed by one white guy. Forget the 343 other people that were killed. You know, where you had like a 98% black on black crime rate, and nobody said a thing.
So talk about that for a minute. It's always been a source of frustration for me, because I remember my first week as police commissioner, I met with the President's Roundtable. And local people would know this nationally, but locally, it's a successful group of black businessmen who, you know, they've done well in life and they have their own, you know, business group. And I was laying out the plan for Baltimore, and one of them said to me, he stopped, first question, he's like, when are your department going to stop killing young black men? Mm-hmm. I was like, wait a minute here. I said exactly what you just said. I said, BPD shot 4 people last year. They were deemed justified. 321 people were killed, 305 that year. I said, almost all were young black men killed by other young black men. I said, we're going to have an honest conversation or not? And then he stopped. He said, all right, let's have an honest conversation. And how do you get around this stuff? How do you even know when someone doesn't want to talk about this subject? You raised it like 3 times about, you know, the portion of murder victims that are killed by people of the same race. Like, how come that is never, why is it not up for discussion?
Because nobody wants to talk about it. 2 years ago, I met with the NAACP in Richmond, Virginia. Mm-hmm. Okay, now the chapter commander down there, who I think you met, Jo White, the female Jo White, who did a great job. And we talked about this because you think about it, across the country, in most of the black neighborhoods, you got the highest crime rate, highest drug use, highest abuse,
poverty rates,
whatever it is that's negative, we excelled. Okay, So she had a meeting down there. We had the ATF, we had the Sheriff's Department, we had the Richmond Police Department, the Fire Department. Everybody had initials was at this meeting. So there were very few community leaders, but we must have had 19 different agencies at this meeting. Now, you know, Baltimore never had a meeting like this. They would never put together a meeting like this because it's something you don't want to talk about.
Right.
But at this particular meeting, one of the things that everybody agreed on is, okay, how do we get the black race or the black communities to basically get involved in their community to help put a handle on stopping the drug abuse, the violence, you know, everything that's so negative, the jail, all this stuff. How do we stop this? Now you had all these agencies. There were black people, white people there, and there was one of the chief of police back at that time was sort of like a Sheriff Gillespie from Heat of the Night, you know,
right.
Old time. He said, "Look, let me tell you something. You know, we had the last 4 homicides here were black on black." He said, and I get phone calls all the time complaining about it. He said, but the 4 people that were shot were black in a black community by black people. Right. So don't come to me complaining that, you know, I just locked up 4 black people. That's just the way it is. He says if this was Chinatown or some other community, right, it would be the same thing. But unfortunately, this is where it is. And, you know, so it's funny to me because even here in Baltimore and even all the meetings that we go to, all the street patrols that we do for communities that won't come out and patrol with us, you know, all the stuff that we do as volunteers to help make things a little easier, especially when it comes to these high crime areas, you know, soon as you bring up the fact that, okay, we got to get involved in our community, it's the community that's going to stop this violence. We had 318 homicides in 2016. And what was the closure rate? The closure rate, you know, was small. You know, it was bad. It just sucked. And, you know, we had a lady show what we did with our headquarters. We put together a cemetery where we made tombstones for everybody that was killed. And it looked like just like a cemetery. We almost ran out of yard.
Wow.
And the lady said, "Oh, my God, that's a lot of homicide victims." I said, "Don't look at it that way." I said, "Look at it as 318 murderers that are still on the street."
Right.
I said, so think of every tombstone there as a killer. And think about it. That's how many people are still on the street. And you're telling me nobody saw one thing. You know, so when it comes to and I kind of get agitated when it comes to these community meetings and all this, because unless you get involved, unless you do something, nothing's going to change. Because who has the guns? Your brothers, your boyfriends, your girlfriends, your sisters, your cousins, your grandmom, your grandpa, even your dad. Somebody you know in that household is carrying an illegal weapon. Somebody you know has shot somebody because they came home and said, "You know, I just popped Ray Ray."
Right.
Somebody, and nobody's saying anything.
Right.
You know,
there's no shortage of cell phone cameras when the police are involved.
Oh no, hell no. There's not at all. You let a white guy shoot a black guy. You're going to have 10,000 phone calls or tips or videos on YouTube. You know, but at the same time, we're okay here. Nobody makes a phone call. Nobody says anything. I met with Daphne Coleman from Mothers of Murdered Sons and Daughters. Right. Great lady, worked so hard, had her son killed. At one of our vigils, she spoke. She asked me to read the names, and she said, "You know what disturbs me?" And I'll never forget what she said. She said, "Is I may be reading the name of one of these murdered victims who may have killed my son."
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. And
So
for people who listen and they have no idea what it's like in the communities we're talking about, I used to go to community meetings and I'd ask how many people have lost a relative to murder, and almost everybody raised their hand. Stunning. Then I'd say, how many have lost more than one? People raise their hand. So you have people who are losing multiple family members to homicide, murders, and it's just it's a stunning thing, and it's something we shouldn't be accepting. Yet we do. And then it brings me to one of my last points. It's like, now that you have the federal government stepping in Baltimore, you know, we saw what happened. They stepped in. We have a consent decree now. They're going to, monitor the police department. And one of the they're talking about, first of all, I read the whole report. No fact. Totally anecdotal. It's just based on, like, their feeling or their interpretation, in my opinion. And one of the things they allege, which is funny, is that, the police are stopping people in certain neighborhoods more than others, and this is outrageous, and clearly it's being targeted towards certain communities in Baltimore. And then I look at the report you compile every month, which is fantastic.
We do this every other day or so. Every time somebody's killed, we update this. We make sure this is updated.
This is a up-to-date, it's the best homicide analysis you'll ever see, government or otherwise. It's amazing. You have it by time of day, race, victim, perpetrator. And I'm just looking at the zip code pages. It's just very interesting to me to see, like, okay, you're saying the police are disproportionately stopping people around the city and therefore they're badly behaved. So let's do something about that. All right. Well, in zip code 21214, there was one person killed last year. In 210, there was one. In 226, there were two. 212, there were four. Okay. So, let's compare it to the other end of the page. In 21213, that's the zip code, 25 people murdered. In 218, 28. 216, 29 were killed. 215, 32 were killed. 223, 35 were killed. 217, 36 were killed. These are tiny, tiny zip codes in a city. So you have zip codes with one person was killed and zip codes with 36 people were killed. Where the hell would they expect the police to be? Exactly. And should the police interactions be equitable across all these neighborhoods?
No, but you look at a lot of, and you'll hear people say, well, we got tons of cops in Fells Point, we got them in Camden, we got all those. Well, at the same time, if you throw a cigarette butt out on the street, somebody in Canton's going to call the police in Fells Point. Right. Where you can have a drug deal going on in the Western District somewhere and nobody will say anything about it. Now if you look at this, these are the sheets that come from 2009 all the way up to now, and it shows the pattern of behavior per district per year. So a lot of the patterns within the police and the communities haven't changed as well.
Right.
So you can, and the good thing about this is the guy who does this, his angel name is Taxman. He is an auditor. He is very good at what he does. Taxman, you've met him, and he's passionate about this. He's able to predict the end of year homicides within 2 or 3 bodies by July.
Really?
And he does that because mathematically, he's looking at the pattern of behavior. Right. And if you can predict that, if you know there's not going to be a change, here, this is what the averages are. This is what this tells us. You can come out. We talked to Colonel Green one time about this. He says, how did you guys figure that out? So we didn't shoot him ourselves, but then we showed him our list all the way to 2006 and said, here, what's changed? You got to change something.
Right. When I was in New York, we had Lou Animal was my partner when I was running the operations up there. He was the chief of the department, and his statement to every commander was, if you can predict it, you can prevent it. And that's what's so frustrating to me. You know where it's going to occur. Mm-hmm. And now the federal government is stepping in, and the police are trying to prevent it by being more active in the neighborhoods that need the police the most. And now they're being hoisted on their own petard. They're being punished for being proactive in the most dangerous neighborhoods. I really am fearful for the next year. 2017, I hope, isn't worse than 16.
Well, it's scary now because now you got so many issues going on. You got the state's attorney's office, mm-hmm. which is pretty much of a mess because you don't have stability there. Everybody's running in and out.
Yes.
We don't have the police officers. I mean, Baltimore at one time had what? You ran it.
100.
Yeah, and what do we have? They did a news article that said we have 800 on the street or something now or something. Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal. Where the hell are they?
Now, people are leaving in big numbers now.
Those are all over the years, and that's Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia. And you look at the numbers, but if you look at stuff like this, and what we do is we go into the communities and we show them this, and we put these on these great big boards so they can't not see them, mm-hmm. and we show them this is your community, this is what's happened here, and how would you tweak a lot of this stuff? You would tweak a lot of this stuff by 1, police presence, 2, community involvement, and 3, the fact that, we know who the bad guys are that live inside these zip codes. Get them the hell off the street. But it's up to the communities to do so. And, our biggest thing now, you look at these stats here, what we put together, and we're changing this year. Because now we're not only going to put these stats together, but now we're going to pull up the names of the homicide victims. Now, last year, one of our angels, Crush, did the first 40 of 2016. The first 40 names. Right. Okay? Out of the first 40, ran all their names and, case search and all this stuff. There was only one that did not have a criminal record who was killed. Yeah. The rest of them were locked up repeatedly. There's some that we had 8 angels. If you tape their records, end to end, would take 8 angels to hold them. Right. To hold the pages together. And we got pictures of it. And, you know, so now you're going to court. So if you're going to court, you know, don't you think that the justice system or the judges have some sort of say in what goes on with these guys, which is where the community public impact statement should come in, or where you should at least look at this and say, holy smoke, dude, you got a 23-page, you know, rap sheet. You know, why the hell are you still on the street? And then next month they turn up dead and the family says, I can't believe you let somebody kill, whatever. Well, wait a minute. You didn't see this coming?
Right.
You didn't see this coming? You know, you can almost predict it, you know. If your kid's carrying a gun out there and he's going through all these issues, you know what? Get life insurance on him. Because basically, you know what? And you know, I would do it just for the fact that I would have a retirement plan coming, because you know he's a badass. You know he's carrying a weapon. You know his time is limited. You might as well make some money off of it. You know, I tell the communities all the time, you know, we have, you know, if you have someone on your block, you know, who's no damn good, you know he's no good, you know he's carrying a weapon. You got the anonymous calling. You got the crime watch numbers. You got all these different ways where you can make a phone call on somebody, and nobody will ever know. But at the same time, think about it. You got 10 of them on your block. That's a pretty good number. Go ahead and make some money off of it. You don't have to work anymore. Go ahead and just turn in all these criminals. You might as well, you know, I told people in December, you know, get some Christmas money. Let's get the guns off the street. Turn these guys in. It's ridiculous to me, Ed. But what scares me now is Baltimore. We have a new mayor. We have somewhat of a new police commissioner, who I think has done a great job, because I think that he's done, you know, for the community. He's always there. I can call him right now. He'd answer the phone. Yeah. You know, what do you need? What do you got to do? Dean Palmier, I think, is excellent. But then you got the new mayor. You got 16 people who ran for mayor this year because everybody in the world figured they could do a better job than Blake. And of course, I agree. You know, then you had, you know, Batts was terminated, which I also thought was a great move. But now, you know, what worries me is we have so many new city council people and so many new things going on here. Where's the learning curve? How do we put all this stuff together, and where are we going to end up? Look at the Southern District. Southern District hasn't had this much crime in a long time. You know, and I mean, people getting shot up, and change is great. But at the same time, you know, you got to figure out, okay, you got to prepare for change too.
Yeah, and that's I got to wrap up, I guess. But my question to you is, they're having trouble keeping experienced police officers. They claim they're having trouble, and I believe them, attracting new recruits because of the climate in this country. The Guardian Angels, you guys rely on volunteerism. You don't get paid. You're not armed. How do you get people to step up now? I mean, we're talking about getting communities involved. If we're ever in communities involved, what do you guys do to actually get people involved in doing this stuff?
It's hard to get people involved in doing. Once you get into it, you got to want to do it.
Right.
You know, and with the Guardian Angels, it's sort of a different thing, because they see the red berets, they see the cameras, they see the flash, they think it's cool.
Right.
But once they get involved, and then they know that you're talking to victims' families, and you're dealing with crimes, and you're dealing with all this sad stuff. You know, it's hard to keep people motivated and upbeat, especially when you go into a community with your volunteer time. You know, the majority of the Guardian Angels that work in that do stuff in Baltimore City all live in surrounding counties. You know, and they come all the way, they volunteer their time to do this. You go into a community because they asked you to be there. We don't go to any neighborhood we're not invited into. And when you get into that community and you find out that everybody that called you there is not willing to do anything for you. They're not willing to help, you know, and it is discouraging. You know, and when it comes to the police department, you know, after all that's happened in Baltimore within the last couple of years, you know, I think the pay increase for the police, for a starting police officer, went way up. You got more benefits than anybody, okay? You got decent days off. So you have what it takes. It's just the fact, how do you motivate people to want to be police officers anymore, especially when you got people in the community whose mothers are telling their children, you know, don't talk to them, they're the bad guys. Yeah. We don't have the officer-friendly thing anymore. And now, you know, I think we just disbanded the community service units anymore, so we don't have that. You know, but you got to get the police back in the communities to talk to people and become a part of that community. Stop switching them out every 10 minutes. And I think that once the communication gap is filled, I think you'll be able to fill those seats. But you got to promote the police department even more. You know, one of the things that Davis did was him and Palmier actually started community programs that invest in Baltimore. You know, when it comes to the Baltimore City Police speaker series, where you talk about the history of Baltimore. They're putting together programs that they're taking into communities to help educate people and make things better. They just started the Citizens Academy back up to show you exactly what it is you go through. You know, so they're doing their job, but at the same time, I think people like me, people like you, and the police and the community leaders out here have to go out and actually help promote the police department and what it is going on. You want a safer neighborhood. You want to go out on your steps and not worry about getting shot up. Get involved. You know, you don't have to go out and wear uniforms and all this other stuff, but do something. Get involved. Go to a meeting. You know, talk it up. Pick up the trash. Turn your lights on. Do something. You got to get involved.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you for your time. And if people are listening and they are intrigued by the Guardian Angels, how can they find them in their community?
You can get in touch with the Guardian Angels at BaltimoreGuardianAngels.org, or you can give us a call at 410-916-2215. Punch up Baltimore Guardian Angels on anything. We're all on Facebook and all the social networks. We're not hard to find.
I assume it's the same around the world because people be listening to this around the country.
Yeah, and the good thing, and just punch up GuardianAngels.org and punch up your city. And the Guardian Angel chapter will come in. And you can go on there and you can learn about the Guardian Angels. We, on our website, have individuals, packets about us as individuals. It tells you who I am and who my angels are and what we do and why we got involved. But it's a great program, and we only ask you for maybe 1 or 2 days a week, 3 or 4 hours a day. It's not long,
right,
but you can get involved. You can do something. You don't have to patrol the streets. There's so much you can do. But get involved.
It's a great message. I agree. Get involved. I've been saying to people for years. Strider, appreciate your time. Marcus Dent of the Guardian Angels of Baltimore, the regional director here. We just had a nice conversation about a lot of things, so we'll see you next week.
Assistant Chapter Commander for the Baltimore Guardian Angels. The Baltimore Guardian Angels are currently recruiting men and women of good character who are dedicated to making a positive change in their communities.
Guardian Angels, integrity,
dedication,
commitment.
Men and women of good character who want to make a difference.
Guardian Angels, join us.
Join us.
Join us.
The Guardian Angels, join us.
It's time to angel up.